Hey, is the SF-90 Spider on the floor available today? Get out! You stinking rat crawling out of the garbage dump, and you're in here?
Tucker Maddox flicked his wrist like he was shooting stray rats. Wendell Ashford didn't move, his jaw set. He took one slow step forward instead of back.
I asked a question.
Tucker's smile dropped.
You deaf, stinking rat, go away! I'm not going anywhere until you answer me.
Tucker laughed. Short, sharp, ugly. He flicked dust off Wendell's torn sleeve with two fingers like it was diseased.
Available. $612,000. You couldn't afford it even if you sold yourself.
Wendell lifted a black briefcase onto the counter. 2 clicks. Tucker's laugh died mid-breath. He didn't know for sure who the raggedly dressed man in front of him really was. 6 hours before Tucker Maddox made the worst mistake of his life, Wendell Ashford was on his knees in the backyard. He was pulling a rusted roll of barbed wire from under a rotting fence post. It was 6:42 on a Saturday morning. The grass was still wet. A mockingbird screamed from the magnolia tree near the shed. Wendell had been out there since 5:30, replacing 4 sections of fence along the back property line. He owned 11 acres in Buckhead, old money land, quiet street, neighbors who waved but never visited. He could have hired a crew. He didn't want a crew. Saturday mornings were for working with his hands. Always had been. The barbed wire snagged on a root. Wendell pulled harder. His flannel sleeve caught on a rusted barb and tore clean from the shoulder down to the elbow. It was a blue and black shirt he'd bought at Walmart for $12. The fabric peeled open like a wound. Underneath, his white undershirt was streaked with gray fence paint and sawdust. He looked at the tear, shook his head, kept working. By 8:15, the fence was done. 4 new posts, 3 coats of sealant on the crossbeams. Wendell sat on the back steps with a glass of ice water and watched the steam rise off the lawn as the sun hit it. His hands were cracked at the knuckles, paint under his fingernails. Sweat had dried white lines on his forearms. His phone buzzed at 9:15. Mr. Ashford, good morning. It's Marco from Ferrari North America Client Relations. Wendell wiped his hands on his jeans before picking up. Old habit. Marco couldn't see his hands. Marco, what's the news? The SF-90 Spider Assetto Fiorano and Argento Nürburgring arrived at your Atlanta dealership yesterday. They're holding it for you. Brendan confirmed personally before he left for the Miami trip. Wendell closed his eyes for 2 seconds. He'd waited 5 months for this car. Number 9 in the collection. The first 8 Ferraris sat in a climate-controlled garage behind the house. A LaFerrari, 2 812 Competiciones, a Monza SP2, a Daytona SP3, and 3 classics he'd restored himself. Every single one paid in full. Cash, no wire, no financing. That was how his grandfather did business. That was how Wendell did business. I'll go this afternoon, Wendell said.
Should I call ahead to the dealership, let them know you're coming?
No need. Brendan knows me. I'll walk in. Of course, sir. Enjoy the car. Wendell hung up, looked down at himself. Torn flannel, paint-streaked jeans, sawdust in his hair. The rational thing was to shower, change, put on something that matched the price tag of the car he was about to buy. He thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. Then he thought about something else. He thought about the 8 times before. Every time he'd walked in wearing a suit, Brendan had greeted him at the door. Every time the paperwork had been smooth, the coffee had been fresh, the handshake had been warm. And every time, Wendell had wondered the same thing. Would they treat me the same way if I showed up looking like I do right now? 12 years of buying Ferraris. He'd never tested that question. Today felt like the day. Eleanor was at her Saturday yoga class. He left a note on the kitchen island. Gone to pick up the Spider. Back by dinner. Don't worry about the flannel. She would know exactly what that meant. At 1:15, Wendell walked into the garage, past all 9 parking bays, stopped at the wall safe behind the tool bench. Combination lock. 3 turns. The door swung open. Inside, a black leather briefcase. He'd packed it 2 days ago when Marco first confirmed the delivery date. 61 bundles of $100 bills, each bundle $10,000, sealed with a paper bank band, plus 2 smaller bundles of $1,000 each in the corner. $612,000 total. He picked up the briefcase. Heavier than people expected. About 13 pounds of paper and leather. He put the briefcase on the passenger seat of the F-150. The truck smelled like pine mulch and motor oil. He drove south on Peachtree toward the dealership with the windows down. The torn flannel sleeve flapped in the wind. At 2 p.m., Wendell Ashford parked his pickup truck in the back of the Ferrari of Atlanta lot. He squeezed between a Bentley Continental and a Porsche Cayenne. He grabbed the briefcase, stepped out, walked toward the glass doors. He didn't check his reflection. He didn't fix his hair. He didn't button the torn sleeve. He just walked in. The Ferrari of Atlanta showroom was built to make rich people feel richer. 20-foot ceilings, Italian marble on the welcome desk, a Rosso Corsa SF90 Spider rotating on a glass platform under pin lights that made the paint look wet. The air smelled like fresh leather and espresso from the bar near the lounge. Soft jazz played through hidden ceiling speakers. 3 customers were already inside. Margaret Cole, a white woman in her 50s, sat at the Roma consultation desk reviewing test drive paperwork. Her father and his teenage son stood near a yellow Portofino, the boy pressing his nose close to the carbon fiber side mirror. A young couple browsed the accessories wall near the back. Tucker Maddox stood behind the welcome desk next to Vivian Carter. He'd been at Ferrari of Atlanta for 4 months. Before that, he sold BMWs in Marietta. He was 31, blonde, clean-shaven, and wore a fitted navy suit that he'd bought on his first commission check. He believed the suit made him the room. He believed he could read a customer in 3 seconds flat. Wendell Ashford walked through the glass doors at 2:03 p.m. Tucker read him in too. Torn flannel hanging off the right shoulder, white undershirt showing through, smeared with gray paint, jeans faded at the knees with sawdust ground into the fabric, work boots that left a faint dirt print on the marble floor, and in his right hand, a black leather briefcase that didn't match anything else on his body. Tucker's nostrils flared. A short breath of air escaped through his nose, not quite a laugh, not quite a sound. Just enough for Vivian to hear. Vivian looked up. Her tablet slipped 2 inches in her hand. She knew that face. She had processed 3 of his purchases in the last 2 years. She opened her mouth. Tucker, that's... I got this. Tucker raised one hand without looking at her. He stepped around the desk. Stay at the counter. He walked straight toward Wendell, positioned himself between Wendell and the SF90 Spider on the display platform, feet wide, arms crossed, chin tilted up. Can I help you? The words were polite. The tone wasn't. The emphasis sat on help, like a dare. Wendell met his eyes. I'd like to see the SF90 Spider, the Argento Nürburgring on the platform. Tucker didn't move. His eyes traveled down the torn sleeve again, stopped at the dirt print Wendell's boot had left on the floor. He made a small clicking sound with his tongue. Sir, the SF90 Spider starts at over $500,000. I know what it costs. Do you, though? Tucker smiled. The kind of smile that showed teeth but no warmth. Because I'm looking at you, and I'm not seeing $500,000. I'm seeing a man who maybe took a wrong turn off Piedmont. The Honda dealership is 4 blocks north. Toyota is 3. There's a Hyundai certified pre-owned lot about 6 blocks that way. He pointed east. Much more in your range. Wendell's jaw tightened. One muscle, just once. His left hand curled into a fist at his side. He uncurled it. Slowly. I didn't ask for directions. I asked to see the car. Tucker laughed, louder this time. His head tilted back slightly. The sound bounced off the marble desk and reached Margaret Cole across the room. She set her coffee cup down. The porcelain clinked against the saucer in the silence that followed. Sir, I'm going to be honest with you because nobody else will. Tucker stepped closer. close enough that Wendell could smell his cologne, something sharp and chemical, sprayed too heavy. "We have a dress code expectation for clients who enter this showroom. It's not written on the door, but it exists. And you're—" He reached out and pinched the torn fabric on Wendell's right sleeve between his thumb and index finger, held it up like a piece of evidence. "This isn't it." He let go, wiped his fingers on his own suit pants, twice, like the fabric had contaminated him. Wendell looked at the spot where Tucker had touched his sleeve. A flake of dried paint had fallen to the marble floor between them. Then he looked back at Tucker's face. "Don't touch me again. Then don't bring this into my showroom again." Tucker stepped back and spread his arms wide, gesturing to the room. "Look around. You see anyone else in here dressed like they just crawled off a construction site?" "No, because our clients understand what this place is. This is Ferrari, not Goodwill." Behind the welcome desk, Vivian closed her eyes for 1 second. She knew what was coming. She'd seen Tucker do this before. Not this bad, but the pattern was the same. Read the clothes, decide the worth, perform the rejection. She stepped forward. "Tucker, can I speak with you for a—" "Vivian!" Tucker pointed at her without turning around. "Counter! Now!" Vivian stopped. Her hand gripped the edge of the tablet until her knuckles turned pale. Tucker turned back to Wendell. His voice dropped lower, not quieter, lower. The kind of low that was designed to humiliate without shouting. "Let me break this down for you, since you don't seem to get the message. This car costs $612,000. That's more than most people make in 10 years. You don't walk in here with sawdust on your pants and a ripped shirt and ask to see it. You don't walk in here smelling like paint thinner and ask to buy it. You just don't." He leaned in, close enough to whisper, "You can't afford the floor mats on that car. We both know it. So stop embarrassing yourself. Walk out, go home, take a shower. Come back when you look like you belong somewhere besides a parking lot." He straightened his tie, smoothed the lapel of his navy suit. The gesture was deliberate, a reminder of the distance between his clothes and Wendell's. The espresso machine behind the lounge bar hissed and sputtered. The jazz track changed to something with a piano. A bead of condensation ran down the side of a water glass on the Roma desk where Margaret sat. Nobody drank from it. Wendell stood perfectly still. His grip on the briefcase handle tightened until the leather creaked under his fingers. His eyes never left Tucker's face. "Are you done?" Tucker grinned. "I'm done when you're gone." Margaret Cole pushed her chair back. The metal legs scraped against the marble. The sound cut through the jazz like a knife. She picked up her phone from the desk, turned on the camera. A small red recording light blinked on. The father near the Portofino put his hand on his son's shoulder and turned him away from the scene. The boy resisted. The father insisted. They walked toward the side exit without looking back. The young couple near the accessories wall stood frozen. The woman had her hand over her mouth. The man stared at his shoes. Tucker didn't notice any of them. He was performing now, playing to a room that had already turned against him without his knowledge. The sweat under his collar hadn't started yet. It would. He turned to Vivian and opened both palms toward Wendell like he was presenting a circus act. "Vivian, you seeing this?" Man walks in off the street in a torn shirt, covered in filth, carrying a mystery briefcase, and demands to buy a $600,000 car on a Saturday, in cash. He laughed, bent forward slightly. The laugh was harder now, sharper. It cracked at the edges. "I mean, I can't make this up. I literally cannot make this up." Vivian said nothing. She stared at the floor. Tucker spun back to Wendell, pointed at the briefcase. "And what's in that? Seriously, what is in that briefcase? Because if it's not $612,000 in cold hard cash, get up and leave. Pick it up and walk out that door right now, before I call Buckhead PD and have them escort you out." He paused, leaned back against the welcome desk, crossed his ankles, folded his arms. Well, open it. Go ahead. Show me what's in the magic briefcase. The showroom was silent. The jazz had faded between tracks. The espresso machine had gone quiet. The SF-90 Spider rotated on its platform. The pin lights reflected off its silver paint in slow circles across the ceiling. Wendell looked at Tucker for a long time. 5 seconds. Maybe 6. His face showed nothing. Then he set the briefcase flat on the marble counter. You want to see what's inside? Tucker smirked. Oh, I'm dying to see. Wendell placed both thumbs on the latches. Remember this moment. Click, click. The lid of the briefcase rose like the cover of a book no one in the room had expected to read. 61 bundles of $100 bills sat in 4 neat rows. Each bundle was 1 inch thick, wrapped in a white paper band stamped $10,000. 2 smaller bundles sat in the corner, $1,000 each. The bills were crisp, but not new. They had weight. They had texture. They had the faintly sweet smell of old ink and cotton fiber that only real cash carries. $612,000. The overhead pin lights bounced off the surface of the top bills and threw tiny rectangles of light onto the marble counter. The briefcase leather creaked as the lid settled all the way open. Tucker Maddox did not move. His mouth was still open from the last laugh. The sound had stopped, but his jaw hadn't closed. His lips were still curled at the edges from the grin. His body hadn't caught up to what his eyes were processing. 3 seconds passed. His grin collapsed. Not slowly, not gracefully. It fell off his face like plaster cracking off a wall. The color left his cheeks in a wave that started at the jawline and climbed to his forehead. His right hand, which had been resting on the welcome desk with casual authority, slid off the edge. He caught himself on the counter. Margaret Cole's phone didn't waver. The red recording light held steady. Vivian Carter, behind the welcome desk, exhaled. It was the first full breath she'd taken in 10 minutes. The young couple near the accessories wall unclenched. The woman lowered her hand from her mouth. The man looked up from his shoes for the first time since Tucker had started performing. Nobody spoke. The jazz track had ended. The next one hadn't started. The only sound in the showroom was the low electrical hum of the SF-90 Spider's rotating display platform. And somewhere, deep in the espresso machine, a valve clicked and released a thin hiss of steam. Wendell Ashford stood with both hands flat on the counter, the open briefcase between them. His torn flannel sleeve hung loose off his shoulder, sawdust still in his hair, paint still on his knees. He looked the same as he had when he'd walked in 12 minutes ago. The only thing that had changed was the room. "Count it," Wendell said. Tucker's eyes snapped from the money to Wendell's face, then back to the money, then back to Wendell. What? You heard me. Count it. You wanted proof, here it is. Pick up the first bundle and start counting. Tucker didn't move. His fingers gripped the edge of the marble counter. His knuckles were white. A vein in his neck had surfaced, thick, pulsing, visible above the collar of his navy suit. Sir, Don't call me sir now. You didn't call me sir when I walked in, you called me boy. You told me to take a shower. You told me to go to Hyundai. Wendell's voice was level, controlled, not loud, louder than loud. Pick up the first bundle. Count. Tucker's right hand released the counter. It was shaking. Not a subtle tremor, a visible, full-hand shake, the kind that happens when adrenaline and shame collide inside the nervous system and neither one wins. He reached for the first bundle. His fingers fumbled with the paper band. It tore unevenly. He fanned the bills and counted. His lips moved, but no sound came out for the first 3 bundles. 10,000, he whispered on the 4th. Wendell said nothing. Margaret adjusted her grip on the phone. She zoomed in on Tucker's hands. The red light kept blinking. By the 10th bundle, Tucker's forehead was damp. A single bead of sweat formed at his hairline. It rolled down his temple and dropped onto the marble counter next to a stack of counted bills. He didn't wipe it. He didn't look up. He just kept counting. By the 20th bundle, his breathing had changed. Shallow, fast, the kind of breathing that comes before either tears or panic. His collar was dark with sweat. The sharp cologne he'd sprayed that morning had mixed with it. The air around the counter smelled sour and chemical now, a far cry from the leather and espresso that had greeted Wendell at the door. Wendell didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't fold his arms or check his phone or look away. He stood on the other side of the counter with his hands at his sides and watched Tucker count every single bill. The torn flannel sleeve hung still. The sawdust in his hair caught the pin lights. This was not revenge. This was a receipt. By the 30th bundle, Vivian had stepped out from behind the welcome desk. She stood 3 feet away with her arms folded across her chest. Not to intervene, not to help, just to witness. She had watched Tucker run the showroom like he owned it for 4 months. 4 months of being told to stay at the counter. Now she was going to stand exactly where she wanted, and she was going to watch every second of this. The young couple had moved closer too. They stood near the Roma desk now, next to Margaret. No one had invited them. No one had told them to leave. They just moved. By the 40th bundle, Tucker dropped one. The paper band slipped off and bills fanned across the marble in a half circle. Tucker scrambled to pick them up. His hands were so wet that the bills stuck to his fingers. He had to peel them off, one at a time. Margaret's phone captured every frame. By the 50th bundle, Tucker had stopped trying to stand straight. He leaned against the counter with both elbows. His shoulders were drawn up around his ears. His suit jacket was rumpled. The tie he had straightened 15 minutes ago was crooked. He looked 10 years older than when Wendell had walked in. Bundle 55, 56, 58, 59, 60, 61. 2 smaller bundles, 1,000 each. Tucker set the last one down. His hands stayed flat on the counter, fingers spread, like a man trying to hold himself above water. He didn't look up. 612,000, he said. His voice was raw. It sounded like he'd been shouting for hours, but he hadn't raised his voice once during the count. The strain was all internal, all shame. "Is it all there?" Wendell asked. "It's all there." "How do you know?" Tucker blinked. Sweat dripped from his brow onto the counter. "I counted it. It's all there. Every dollar." Wendell nodded once, slowly. "That's the first time since I walked in here that you've done your job." The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. The SF-90 Spider rotated. The pin lights traced circles on the ceiling. Margaret's red dot blinked. The HVAC system pushed cold air through a vent directly above Tucker's head. He might have been shivering. It was hard to tell the difference between the cold and the shaking. Tucker's left knee buckled first. Not dramatically, not a Hollywood collapse. His leg simply stopped holding weight. He caught himself on the counter with one hand, but his right knee followed, and then he was on the polished marble floor. One knee down, then both. His forehead almost touched the counter's edge. He knelt on the floor of the showroom he had called his. "Mister, I'm sorry, I didn't know." Wendell looked down at him. The torn flannel sleeve hung loose. The paint stains were still there. The sawdust was still in his hair. Nothing about Wendell had changed. "Stand up," Wendell said. "I don't need you on your knees. I need you to remember what put you there." Tucker grabbed the counter with both hands, pulled himself up. His legs wobbled. He steadied, barely. Wendell turned to Vivian. "Miss Carter, I'd like to complete the purchase with you. Would you handle the paperwork?" Vivian's chin lifted. Her back straightened. She picked up her tablet from the welcome desk and walked to the consultation area with steady steps. "Yes, Mr. Ashford. I'd be happy to." The way she said his name was quiet, professional, but Tucker heard it, and whatever was left of the color in his face drained completely. Ashford. He mouthed the word. No sound, just lips moving around two syllables that were now rearranging everything he thought he knew. He had heard that name before. In the monthly sales briefing emails, in the client portfolio that Brendan had reviewed with the team on Tucker's second week, in the list of Ferrari's top regional collectors. Wendell Ashford. 9 Ferraris, 12 years as a client, invitation-only hyperseries status. The man Brendan had described in training as our most important relationship in the Southeast. The man Tucker had told to take a shower. The man Tucker had called boy. Tucker leaned against the welcome desk. His fingers left wet prints on the marble. The navy suit he'd bought on his first commission check hung on him now like it belonged to someone else. Nobody in the showroom looked at him. Everybody in the showroom looked at Vivian. Vivian led Wendell to the consultation area near the Roma display. She pulled out a leather chair for him. He sat. She opened the purchase agreement on her tablet. SF90 Spider Assetto Fiorano, Argento Nürburgring exterior, Nero interior with blue contrast stitching, carbon fiber racing package. Wendell nodded. That's the one. Payment method? Cash, as counted. Vivian typed without looking up. Her fingers were steady, her voice was steady, but her jaw was set tight and the tendons in her neck stood out like cables. Tucker stood at the welcome desk 15 feet away. He hadn't moved. His hands were still flat on the marble. The counted bundles sat between his palms like a wall he couldn't climb over. He watched Vivian work. He watched the commission of a lifetime walk to someone else's tablet. Margaret Cole lowered her phone for the first time in 20 minutes. She kept the camera app open. The glass front doors swung inward. Brendan Whitfield walked in with a roller bag and a laptop case. Gray blazer creased from a 3-hour flight from Miami. Ferrari branch manager badge on his breast pocket. He had the dazed look of a man who'd been up since 4 in the morning. He made it 3 steps inside before he saw Wendell. He stopped. The roller bag bumped against his heel. His face changed. Not surprise, something warmer. The way you look when a friend shows up to a party you thought they'd skip. Mr. Ashford. He let go of the roller bag in the middle of the floor, left the laptop case next to it, walked straight to the consultation area with both hands extended. I had no idea you were coming today. Marco told me the Spider landed, but I figured next week. He took Wendell's hand in both of his and shook it. Firm, long, genuine. How are you, sir? How's Eleanor? Still giving you trouble about garage space? He hadn't looked at the torn flannel. He hadn't looked at the sawdust or the paint-stained jeans or the dirt prints on the marble. He was looking at Wendell's face the way a man looks at a client he has known for 12 years. Eleanor's doing well. She'll have opinions about the color. Brendan laughed. A real laugh, not a performance. She always does. But the stitching will win her over. I had Marinello do blue contrast thread to match your 812 Competizione. He gestured toward the platform. 9 cars now, Mr. Ashford. Finest private collection south of Virginia. Wendell smiled. Small, tired, but real. Brendan. Something in his tone made Brendan stop. He looked around the showroom for the first time. The silence hit him first. No jazz, no conversation, no espresso machine. Then the details. Margaret with her phone raised. The young couple frozen by the accessories wall, Vivian at the consultation table with paperwork already open. And Tucker. Sweat stains on his collar, hands flat on the marble, face the color of old paper. Between his palms, 61 counted bundles of $100 bills and 2 smaller stacks spread across the counter. Brendan's smile faded. Mr. Ashford, what happened before I got here? Wendell's voice was even. No anger, no satisfaction, just facts. I walked in wearing this. Your new sales associate decided I couldn't afford to be here. He told me to leave, told me to try Hyundai. He touched my shirt and wiped his hand on his pants, called me boy, told me to take a shower. Wendell paused. Then he dared me to open the briefcase. So I did. And I had him count every dollar. Brendan closed his eyes. 3 seconds.
How long have you been here, sir?
About 40 minutes. Brendan exhaled through his nose, long and slow. Mr. Ashford, on behalf of Ferrari of Atlanta, I am deeply sorry. This is not who we are. This is not who I trained this team to be. He turned to Vivian. Vivian, are you handling the paperwork? Yes, sir. Good. I'll sit with you if Mr. Ashford allows it. Wendell nodded. Vivian handles the sale. The commission is hers. Absolutely. Vivian, this is your sale. Vivian's pen stopped for 1 second. She blinked twice. Then she kept writing. Brendan turned toward Tucker. He didn't raise his voice. Tucker, my office. Now. Tucker peeled his hands off the marble. The wet prints stayed behind. He walked toward the back hallway on legs that didn't quite bend right. He didn't look at Wendell. He didn't look at Vivian. He didn't look at Margaret or the couple or the empty space where the father and son had stood. He looked at the floor. It was all he had left. The door closed behind them with a soft, pneumatic hiss. The showroom settled into silence. The SF-90 Spider kept rotating under the pin lights. Vivian turned the tablet toward Wendell. Sign here, Mr. Ashford. He signed. The pen left a faint smudge of gray fence paint on the screen. The door to Brendan's office stayed closed for 22 minutes. Nobody in the showroom could hear the words, but they could see the shapes through the frosted glass. Brendan standing behind his desk, Tucker sitting in the chair across from him. Then Tucker standing. Then Tucker's hands moving, palms up, the universal gesture of a man explaining why it wasn't his fault. Then Brendan pointing at the chair, Tucker sitting back down. Outside the office, the showroom had slowly returned to something that looked like normal. The jazz had come back on, the espresso machine was hissing again, but nobody was browsing, nobody was test driving. The young couple had left. The Roma desk where Margaret had been sitting was empty. A cold cup of coffee and a saucer with a hairline crack from when she'd set it down too hard. That was all. Margaret was standing near the front doors talking to Wendell. Mr. Ashford, I want you to know I recorded everything. From the moment he touched your sleeve. Wendell looked at her. I know you did. I saw the red light. I'm going to post it. People need to see this. Wendell was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the parking lot through the glass doors. The SF-90 Spider sat on the delivery pad near the side entrance, freshly detailed, catching the afternoon sun. That's your decision, Ms. Cole, not mine. Margaret nodded. She held out her hand. Wendell shook it. He laughed at you 5 times, she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. I counted. 5 times in 12 minutes. He laughed at you until you put $612,000 in cash on that counter. I recorded every laugh, every single dollar. Wendell held her hand for an extra second, then let go. Thank you for standing up. I should have stood up sooner. You stood up. That's what matters. Margaret walked out to the parking lot. She sat in her car for 6 minutes before she drove away. During those 6 minutes, she uploaded the video to 3 platforms. Back inside, the office door opened. Brendan came out first. His jaw was tight. He walked to the welcome desk, placed both hands flat on the marble, and spoke to Vivian. Vivian, effective today, you are senior sales specialist. We'll formalize the paperwork Monday, but I want you to know now. Vivian's tablet was still in her hand. She gripped it a little tighter. Thank you, Brendan. Don't thank me. You earned it. You earned it before today. Tucker came out of the office 3 minutes later. He was carrying a cardboard box. Inside it, a framed BMW sales award from his previous dealership, a coffee mug that said "Closer" in gold letters, a phone charger, a lint roller. The contents of 4 months at Ferrari of Atlanta fit in a box the size of a microwave. He walked through the showroom without looking left or right. His navy suit was wrinkled. The tie was still crooked from when he'd been counting money. The collar was still dark with dried sweat. He pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the afternoon heat. The Atlanta sun hit him like a wall. 91 degrees. The asphalt in the parking lot was soft under his shoes. He put the box in the trunk of his car, a silver Hyundai Elantra. He got in the driver's seat. He did not start the engine. He sat there. Through the windshield, he could see the delivery pad. The SF-90 Spider gleamed silver under the sun. $612,000 of carbon fiber and Italian engineering paid for in cash by a man in a torn flannel shirt. The driver's side door of the Spider opened. Wendell Ashford stepped in. He was still wearing the flannel, still had sawdust in his hair. He started the engine. The V8 hybrid turned over with a sound like a deep breath held too long and finally released. The Spider rolled off the pad, turned left onto Peachtree, and disappeared into traffic. Tucker watched until it was gone. Then he watched the empty space where it had been. He sat in the Hyundai for another 8 minutes. The engine was off. The windows were up. The air inside the car grew thick and hot. Sweat ran down his temples the same way it had run down them inside the showroom, but this time no one was watching. He started the car. The Hyundai's 4-cylinder engine coughed to life. He drove home. Margaret Cole's video hit the internet at 3:42 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. By Sunday morning, it had 400,000 views. By Monday night, it had crossed 6 million. By Wednesday, 12 million. The title she gave it was simple. Ferrari salesman laughs at black man in torn shirt. Then the briefcase opens. The video was 11 minutes and 43 seconds long. It started with Tucker pinching the fabric of Wendell's torn sleeve between his thumb and forefinger. It ended with Tucker on his knees on the marble floor, mouth open, no sound coming out. The comments section filled faster than any post Margaret had ever made. And Margaret had never made a post before. She had 200 followers on the day she uploaded it. She had 900,000 by Friday. The internet did what the internet does. It found Tucker Maddox within hours. His LinkedIn profile, his previous employer, his BMW sales record in Marietta, his Instagram account, which featured photos of him leaning against cars he didn't own, wearing suits he'd bought on credit. Someone found his apartment complex. Someone found his college transcript. Someone found a tweet from 2021 where he'd made a joke about a homeless man outside a Porsche dealership. That tweet was screenshotted and reposted 40,000 times in one day. Tucker deleted his social media accounts by Thursday. It didn't matter. The screenshots lived forever. On Monday morning, before the video had even peaked, Brendan Whitfield made 2 phone calls. The first was to Ferrari North America headquarters in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. He spoke with the regional director for 18 minutes. He did not sugarcoat what had happened. He did not minimize. He used the word failure 3 times and the word unacceptable twice. The regional director thanked him for calling before the press did. The second call was to the entire sales team at Ferrari of Atlanta, 9 employees, conference room, door closed. What happened on Saturday is the worst thing I've seen in 20 years of selling cars, Brendan said. He stood at the head of the table. No slides, no notes, just his voice. A man walked into this showroom to buy a car he had every right to buy. And one of us told him he didn't belong here. Told him to take a shower. Called him boy. Made him prove his own money was real by counting it bill by bill in front of strangers. He paused, looked at each person in the room. That man has been our client for 12 years. But even if he hadn't been, even if he'd been a first-time walk-in with no history and no name, the treatment would have been just as wrong. Vivian Carter spoke next. Brendan had asked her to. She stood at the far end of the table with her hands folded.
Tucker told me to stay at the counter twice, she said.
Her voice was quiet, but it carried. I knew who Mr. Ashford was. I tried to tell Tucker. He cut me off both times. He didn't want my input. He wanted an audience. She paused. I've been on this floor for 4 years. I've watched customers get read by their clothes, their hair, their skin, their accent. Tucker was the loudest about it. He wasn't the only one. The room was silent. 2 of the other salespeople looked at the table. 1 looked at Vivian. Nobody argued. By Wednesday, Ferrari North America had issued an internal directive to every authorized dealership in the United States. It did not name Tucker. It did not name the Atlanta location. But the subject line read, Customer Experience Standards, Mandatory Review. Every dealership manager was required to hold a team meeting within 2 weeks. The directive included a new clause. Any customer complaint involving racial profiling would trigger an automatic third-party review. No exceptions. No internal closures. Tucker Maddox posted a video apology the following Friday. He recorded it in his apartment. White wall behind him, no suit, a plain gray t-shirt. He looked into the camera with an expression that was aiming for remorse and landing closer to self-pity. I want to apologize to Mr. Ashford and to everyone who saw the video, he said. I made assumptions based on appearance. That was wrong. I'm not a racist. I made a mistake. The video lasted 90 seconds. The comment section lasted much longer. The top comment with 62,000 likes read, You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. 5 times. Tucker disabled comments within an hour. Local Atlanta news picked up the story by the second week. WSB-TV ran a 3-minute segment. They showed clips from Margaret's video. They interviewed Brendan, who repeated what he'd said in the team meeting almost word for word. They reached out to Wendell Ashford's office. His assistant declined on his behalf. No statement, no interview, no public comment. Margaret Cole accepted one interview. WSB-TV. She sat in a studio chair with her hands in her lap. I was there to test drive a Roma, she said. I wasn't planning to record anything. But that young man touched Mr. Ashford's sleeve and wiped his hand on his pants, like he'd touched something dirty. I couldn't sit there after that. The interviewer asked what she remembered most. Margaret was quiet for 3 seconds. The counting, she said. He made that salesman count every single bundle. 61 bundles. It took almost 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, nobody in that showroom said a word, not one word. That silence was the loudest thing I've ever heard. They offered her an appearance fee. She declined. I didn't do anything special. I held up a phone. Anyone could have done it. That's the whole point. 2 months after the video, Tucker Maddox was hired at a used car lot off Interstate 85 in Chamblee. No luxury brands, no marble floors, no espresso machines. The lot sold certified pre-owned Kias and Nissans. His commission structure was 12% of profit margin, which on most sales came out to about $300 per car. He never sold a Ferrari again. He never sold anything close. Vivian Carter closed her first quarter as senior sales specialist with the highest volume on the floor. Brendan put her name on the annual performance board in the showroom lobby. It was the first time a black woman's name had appeared there in the dealership's 19-year history. Nobody made a speech about it. It just went up on the board. That was enough. 1 month later, on a Saturday morning, Wendell Ashford was in his garage. The SF-90 Spider sat in Bay 9, silver paint under soft LED overheads. Next to it, the Daytona SP3 in Rosso Magma, the Monza SP2 in triple layer black, the LaFerrari in Giallo Medina. 8 more bays stretching down the wall, each one holding a car that most people would never see in person, let alone own. Wendell was wiping down the spider with a microfiber cloth, slow circles on the hood. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, blue and black, same as the one from that Saturday. Eleanor had sewn the torn sleeve back together with a double stitch that left a faint ridge along the seam. He could feel it every time he raised his right arm. He never asked her to fix it. She just did. The garage smelled like tire rubber and wax. The faint trace of old motor oil never quite left the concrete floor, no matter how many times he sealed it. Eleanor came through the side door carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one, stood next to the spider with her hip against the driver's side fender. "You see Margaret Cole's video? 18 million now." Wendell took a sip. "I saw. She's turned down 4 podcast interviews this week and a book deal." "That sounds like Margaret." Eleanor looked at the row of cars, then back at him. "You're never going to talk about it publicly, are you?" Wendell set the cloth on the hood, picked up his coffee with both hands. "No." "Why not?" He thought about it. Not for long. "Because the story isn't mine to tell anymore. It's Margaret's. It's Vivian's. It's every person who watched that video and recognized something in it." He took another sip. "I just went to buy a car." Eleanor smiled. She didn't push it. 28 years of marriage had taught her where his boundaries lived. She kissed him on the cheek, picked up her mug, and went back inside. Wendell stood alone in the garage. 9 Ferraris, 1 microfiber cloth, 1 mug of coffee going cold in his hands. He thought about Tucker Maddox, not with anger, not with satisfaction. He thought about a 31-year-old man in a Navy suit who believed the suit was enough, who believed he could read a person in 3 seconds, who had been so certain about what he saw that he never considered what he was missing. Wendell didn't hate Tucker. He pitied him. And that was worse. He set the coffee down on the workbench, pulled a chair over, sat down at the bench and opened a drawer. Inside, a sheet of cream stationery, a fountain pen Eleanor had given him for their 20th anniversary. He uncapped it. Margaret had sent him a letter the previous week, short, handwritten. She thanked him for how he'd carried himself in the showroom. She said her 14-year-old daughter had watched the video. The girl asked a question Margaret couldn't answer. "Mom, why didn't anyone else say something?" Wendell picked up the pen and began writing, not to Margaret, to her daughter. He wrote about silence, about how it's easier to look at your shoes than to lift your head, about how standing up doesn't always mean standing up first. Sometimes it means standing up at all. He wrote about a torn shirt and a briefcase and a marble floor that reflected everything except what mattered. He didn't write about money. He didn't write about Ferraris. He didn't write about Tucker's name or Tucker's face or Tucker's career. He wrote 1 line at the bottom of the page. "The question you asked your mother is the only question that matters. Keep asking it." He signed it, folded the letter into thirds, slid it into an envelope, wrote the address Margaret had included at the bottom of her note. He set the envelope on the workbench next to the coffee mug, picked up the microfiber cloth, went back to wiping down the spider. The garage was quiet. The LEDs hummed. The concrete floor was cool under his boots. Outside, a mockingbird started up in the magnolia tree, the same tree that had been screaming at 6 in the morning on the day everything changed. Wendell listened to it, kept wiping, didn't rush. This story is fiction, but the feeling of walking into a room where someone has already decided who you are, that is not fiction. That is documented in case after case, city after city, showroom after showroom. The torn shirt changes. The briefcase changes. The name changes. The feeling never does. Tucker laughed 5 times in 12 minutes. In those 12 minutes, most of the room stayed silent. Only one person raised a phone. Only one person said something. So here's the question Margaret's daughter asked, the one Margaret couldn't answer. the one Wendell wrote a letter about. Why didn't anyone else say something? And the harder version, if you'd been in that showroom, would you have? Drop the word witness in the comments if this story moved you. Like, share, and subscribe to Black Voice Uncut. And if you've ever been the only person in the room who saw what was happening, tell us. We're listening.
The story is over, but one thing keeps sticking with me. We usually believe that when somebody loses everything, it's because of one big event, a fire, a scandal. We picture loss as something loud, something dramatic. But this story showed me something quieter. Most people don't lose their lives to one big disaster. They lose them to one wrong story being told about them, and never getting a chance to correct it. A rumor, a misunderstanding, one person's words taken over another's, a lie in an 8-hour flight that nobody bothered to investigate. That's all it takes to put a person out of the lie they built. That's what gets me. The man in this story didn't lose his career to incompetence. He lost it to a story written by someone with more credibility in a room he wasn't allowed to defend himself in. And once that story was written, the world kept reading it back to him for years. Every job application, every closed door, the story doesn't work. Here's what scares me. We do this to people all the time. We don't mean to. We hear something about somebody and we believe it. We don't act. We pass it along. Somewhere out there, a person we have never met is paying the price for a story we have repeated. So the lesson is, when you hear something about somebody, especially something bad, pause. Ask where it comes from. Ask who benefits from it being true. Because the deepest weapon in the world is a story nobody bothered to check. If you had been in that conference room, would you have stood up? I would recommend hit like, subscribe. See you next time.